Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Online Warriors podcast. We just completed Labor Day and we're back here on a Tuesday in the recording studio to talk to you about the big news of the day. Well, yeah, there's some big news today. But before we get to that, I'm of course Illeagle 86, one of your three stalwart hosts, and I'm joined by my fantastic compatriots, Nerdbomber and Techtic. What's up, guys?
Hello, how's it going?
Everything's going pretty well over here. How about you?
Surviving, you know. It's back to school time. I think I talked about this last week. It's back to school time. The kids are back to school. They're listening to the podcast instead of doing their online classes. So our listenership is up. I'm just kidding. I have no idea. Is our listenership up? Is it down? I don't know.
I honestly haven't looked. I went on holiday, took 4 days off and still kind of getting back in the swing of things.
Right. Yeah, that 3-day weekend, the Tuesday, I will say, this morning was tough. That's why they call it Labor Day. They're like, you know how much you love not working? Don't work for a day, but then see how much it sucks tomorrow. Happy Labor Day to all the workers of the world. We've got some news on something you could spend your hard-earned money on. Today we're going to be talking about the big Xbox drop today. A couple things to talk about. Xbox Series S being the main one, but the Series X was also, I think, reportedly priced. I don't know if Microsoft has confirmed it yet, but it seems like everybody knows. We finally have a price point for the Series X, and the Series S leaked. And spoiler alert, it's significantly cheaper. And both come out on November 10th, but we'll get to that. We also need to talk about what I think is a pretty serious promise that Uber has made about electric vehicles. And then we'll be talking about some news from Nintendo, some stuff from the Nintendo Direct last week, and some other news from Hyrule. You know that place, the place where Zelda is, the place where Link is, the games that I've never played. So I might be pretty silent during that part, but we'll get to that later. First things first, the Xbox Series X. We talked about next gen, I feel like at least every other podcast for the past few months. That's not going to stop. I mean, the holiday season's coming. They're going to actually be pricing these, releasing them. There's going to be an actual console war, and we're going to be a part of it. We're going to be at least watching it.
Man, I hope so. I feel like we've been talking about this, and we still don't really have, I think this is the first time we really have concrete information about things.
That's true. Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah, there's a lot to dive into here. So, as I said before, the Series X is reportedly going to be priced at $499, which I actually think is right. I mean, it's right about where people have speculated. If anything, it's on the low end of what people have speculated, which is good. And it's supposed to launch on November 10th, which to me falls right in line with what the expectation was. Doesn't seem like it's been delayed or anything. That's all kind of, above board, things we were, for the most part, already expecting. But the big surprise drop today is the Xbox Series S. And I have to make sure I enunciate. There's a difference between X and S, and the S will be $299, and this is going to be similar to PlayStation 5, going with basically a version with a disc drive and a version without. This is an all-digital version of the next-gen console. Significantly lower teraflops. I believe it's 4 teraflops as opposed to 12 in the Series X. 512 gigabyte solid-state drive, 4K streaming capabilities, and the ability to play next-gen games, I guess, is the big step between the Xbox One X and the Xbox Series S. But we should talk about this because I think so did you guys watch the trailer, the quote-unquote trailer that they put out for basically a brief video describing what the Series S is?
I did, yeah.
And I found it so interesting. What to Microsoft seemed to be the highlight of the Series S? What was the thing they were touting so much?
I think it was Game Pass. I don't know if we're on the same page, but it basically seemed to be like...
No. We're not on the same page, but that's fine. I think they are so enamored with how small this thing is.
Oh, that's true. They did bring that up a lot, that it was the smallest console ever.
And I don't care. Like, am I the only one who doesn't care?
No, I can kind of get that with respects to fitting it into your entertainment system. But as far as that being the big thing to tout, yeah, definitely lower on the totem pole.
They brought it up a few times. I knew they said it was 60% smaller than what the Series X will be, which granted, we joked about how the Series X looks like it's a mini fridge, basically. This will be smaller. All white design, but it has this
giant
It's not a speaker, is it? Yeah, it looks like it wants to be a speaker, but I believe it's just for...
It's just a giant ventilation fan. But yeah, they make it look like a speaker and or a disc drive or something. Like, you remember on the old PlayStation 1, how you would like hit the button and the circle would
and it would pop up?
Yeah, that's what it reminds me of. But it's not, because there's no disc drive.
That'd be cool. They should bring that back. When you were a kid, you have like a Walkman. I had like a Walkman CD player. And the disc drive would like pop up.
That whole thing.
They should bring that back.
It always had like anti-skip technology, but then it would skip every other second. Yeah. Good times.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, Series S I mentioned before, $299 retail price. And also I should note, it says expected retail price, which I don't know what could change between now. I guess a lot could change between now and November 10th. But yeah, as you mentioned, Nerdbomber, Game Pass, they're also touting that as much as they have been, pretty much the whole time since they announced it, which is totally fair. I guess I want your guys' opinion on this. My opinion, obviously the $300 price point is attractive, right? And it's designed to be attractive. I said this with the PlayStation all digital version, which is that I would never get it. I would never want it. I like physical copies of things. I don't like to be hamstrung to digital versions of things only because you can't buy used games that way, and used games are where I tend to make a killing. And also, I also kind of feel like if you're going to go next gen, you should go all the way, right? This is to me, this is a half measure when a full measure is what you actually want. I don't know.
So for me personally,
I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think this is a good entry point, I guess. And I acknowledge the fact that there needs to be a lower priced entry, because a lot of people, let's be real, we're all hobbyists and fans of video games. But for the average person, especially now when things in the world and the economy are so shaky, like you need to have a lower priced option. That said, I'm a little disappointed in the storage of the device, because if you don't have a disk drive, and I know that you can have expandable storage, but 512 is not nearly enough storage. Like, you need a terabyte in most next gen consoles at this point. Every game that you purchase is really pushing the limit on how big the file sizes are. So storage was a little iffy for me, and I guess I could never see myself buying this because I don't like all digital. I'm still stuck in that world where I like to buy discs. Even if I'm not getting it used, I still like to have a disc. And it's super annoying to have to get up and change the disc all the time, which is why I also have Game Pass and kind of double dip. But like, if I want to buy like a special edition of something, for example, when The Walking Dead was finally finished, I bought the special edition with the disc, and it came with all of these cool little collectibles and a t-shirt and stuff like that. And I wouldn't be able to do that. I mean, I guess I could go through and buy all of the different collectibles alone, but like, I like to be able to buy a disc if I want to. So for me, this doesn't really do anything.
Exactly.
But for some people, it might.
Yeah. The other thing,
you want the option. Is the key.
Exactly.
I think. You want the option to, if you want to buy a disc, buy a disc. And with regards to the storage, my PS4 has 500 gigs of storage. And granted, for my PS4, that's pretty much fine. I mean, I have to shuffle games on and off of the hard drive. That's just kind of the way it is. But like, I have to imagine these next gen games are going to be beefy boys, right? So you're going to need more than that. Is what I'm also inclined to think. But Techtic, I didn't mean to cut you off. What do you got?
Beyond like the props and stuff that you can get from buying physical content, you will quickly make your money back by having the option to flex between digital or non-digital, because sometimes you get games with gold, so you get the digital for free, or sometimes you can buy a disc that's on sale, whereas the digital content is still full price. So within 10 games, I think I'll very quickly make my money back that I lost on buying the more expensive console. So just financially, either way, it doesn't make sense to me to go with the cheaper one.
The other thing that I will say, the naming convention, and we've talked about Xbox's really bad naming convention, but
that's what I was about to bring up.
There's some poor kid who's going to want this console, and they're going to end up getting the Xbox One S or even the Xbox One X. The enunciation is so critical here. But like, the naming convention is just so crazy.
Between the Series
I got you a
X.
great deal.
Right. Between the Series X and the Series S, there's already enough confusion. I don't understand. I mean, PlayStation figured it out, right? They say, okay, PS, and put a number on it.
Right?
That's we're done.
I mean, people are saying that like, Microsoft stopped production on the old consoles, they're phasing it out. But at the end of the day, we all know that's not how stock in a store works. Like, stores are still going to be selling the old consoles, so there's going to be confusion, at least for this first year. So I wonder what they were doing. Like, call it the Xbox Nerdbomber, and no one would be confused.
Well, and the thing is, too, I remember there were jokes. So Microsoft started with the Xbox, and then they said, what's the next one going to be called? And some poor sap said, Xbox 2, and they were like, no, screw that. It's not imaginative enough. We want to go a full 360 degrees. We're calling it the Xbox 360. Then...
Which doesn't even get you anywhere. It puts you back where you started.
Well, right, so there's that. But then the next one comes out, and they're in a board meeting, and what should we call this thing? And I remember there were memes all going around that were like, Xbox 720, which I think is stupid, but hey, at least then there would be a convention and a consistency. But they were like, no, let's go back to the Xbox. Let's call it the Xbox One, which is stupid on multiple levels because A, you already had the Xbox One. It was the first Xbox. And 2, you call it the Xbox 3. Like, there's so many. It's not the Xbox.
So I have some.
And now they're going with a series. I
have some, like, not conspiracy theories, but I've seen on the internet some different theories as to how this naming convention even came to be. So when Xbox came out, they were one generation behind PlayStation. So the Xbox was out at the same time as the PlayStation 2. When the 360 came out, it came out at the same time as the PlayStation 3, but if they call it the Xbox 2, then it looks like you're
They'll be behind. Oh,
so they called it the Xbox 360. Now, in daily vernacular, people didn't call it the whole Xbox 360. They just called it the 360. So when they moved on to the third one, they wanted people to refer to it as the One, so that from a marketing standpoint, it would be the one console that you would buy. But they flubbed it because it didn't make any sense, and it really lent itself to be called Xbone instead, which is what I call it.
Well, and what they should do too, like, because they have all these cool, super cool. Whoever's coming up with the project names at Microsoft, give that person a raise. This one was called what? Project Scarlet or something.
Call it that.
And I was like, call it that. Make it red. And I'd be like, yes. But instead you're like, I mean, that's the other thing I wanted to get to. And now we're just railing on, poor Microsoft. If anyone listening to this podcast works for Microsoft, they're probably so
But like,
depressed.
I am, but like, I have to make a one statement really quickly. So I do have a PlayStation 4 and I have an Xbox One, and I spend the majority of my time on the Xbox One. So I'm not like a Sony fanboy by any means. I would say probably 95% of my time is spent on Xbox. And I love what they're doing with Game Pass, but they do have some questionable marketing decisions. They just do.
And like, so that's a fair point. I think I'm much more of I had an Xbox One and I sold it. I'm much more of a Sony boy. So you know, I'll take the flack that I deserve for that. Although I'm now getting more into Switch down, but that's whole nother world, basically. But looking at this picture, so I have in front of me a Verge article talking about Xbox Series S, and this is, I think, like their marketing, like, promo image, and it's the console and the controller, and maybe I missed this. I'm sure we've had to have talked about the controller on a past episode. Why did they take the colors off the buttons? Whose choice was that?
I think that's been that way for a while. I don't think that's new because I have the blue controller and that doesn't have color on the buttons. It has like on the interior of the buttons.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it has like a little dot with the colors on them, but yeah, the actual buttons themselves don't have color. And Techtic, I believe you have a white controller from when you got the Xbox One S, not the Series S. Very important distinction. And I don't believe that has color on it either. I think it's all white buttons.
Yeah.
Which, first of all, I hate that. And I guess I missed the boat because I'm not an Xbox person, but why get rid of the colors? But on a larger point, you know, when you look at the promotional images for the PlayStation, you get that splash of blue, right? And some people don't like the racing stripe on the console, but even just looking at the controller, you get a splash of color. And when I look at this promotional image, I feel like I've gone colorblind and I should see a doctor. It is just black and white, and like, this is the Series S.
I don't necessarily hate the color scheme because I will say, so when we had the original Xbone, it was black. And when Techtic got the Xbox One S, it was all white. And at first I was like, oh, this is going to look really bright and just stand out like a sore thumb in our living room.
It's a nice modern aesthetic.
Yeah, it's a really nice modern look. That said, I don't know if that modern look carries through when you have a giant black circle.
A speaker.
Yeah, like I don't think it looks bad. It's just that giant black circle looks a little out of place, but I understand they need ventilation. I just don't know why you wouldn't blend it in like they did with the Series X and have some like light shining through when the machine is on. To me, that would have been a little bit better of an aesthetic, but hey, you know, it's not going to look terrible in my home console, so.
You're not going to see it. I mean, it's going to be lying flat in most people's setups, right? So you're not going to see the big black disc, but at the same time, like, put a little bit more design effort into like, they really like, we need ventilation. Someone's like, just put a circle on it, poke holes in it, and the air will get out. I don't know. I don't want to come down too hard on Xbox. I mean, I don't think the PlayStation 5 looks particularly good either. And again, we're, like you said before, we're hobbyists, right? We we take this stuff very seriously, but there's a whole nother market of much more casual gamers who will love the $300 price point and won't care too much how it looks.
That said, I will say overall the price point does kind of put the ball in Sony's court right now, because I was not expecting $499 for the Series X. I honestly expected it to be $599. A lot of the reports that we've been seeing have been saying $599 as like a speculative price, and the hardware inside is not cheap. Like, the hardware is pretty high power, very expensive hardware.
They're losing money on this, but it's true of most consoles, if not all. But
I'm really interested to see if Sony, if they even can change the price at this point, because we've heard rumors that the PlayStation 5 is going to come in at a $599 price point. So are they going to stick with their guns if that is their price point? Are they going to try to match Xbox, undercut them? Because I will say, if you go back to the last gen, part of the reason that made the PlayStation 4 successful and it got them in so many homes, even though if you look at their launch lineup, it wasn't that strong. They only had a couple games. It wasn't like this huge lineup of first-party games that we know the console to have now. And it was majorly because they undercut the Xbox One by a lot. So it'll be interesting to see how this whole pricing game plays out.
It's actually interesting because the way I heard about this news, I'll let you into my life here for a second. The way I found out about the news about the Series S and the announcement of the launch date for the Series X and all the pricing and everything was I actually went on Twitter this morning and I saw that Sony was trending. And the reason it was trending is everyone's like, oh boy, what is Sony going to do? And I've heard rumors that they're going to announce stuff tomorrow. Who knows? Tomorrow will be when this podcast comes out. So maybe you'll be listening to this and you'll go look and you'll see that, they said it's, $600. I agree that the general ambiance of the Sony offices today was probably pretty icy. It's probably not a good day for them. But I'll be very curious to see, because I think the release date's important too. We don't know for sure that it's ready. So it could be an interesting few days. But I guess to wrap this up, we end the next gen conversations the same way every time, but I don't know how else to end it other than asking, what are you guys' plans here? Xbox or Sony or both? If you're getting the Xbox, which one are you getting?
I 100% am getting whatever one has a disc drive. However, I'm still very much going back and forth.
You're a free agent.
The gaming content that we've seen, I'm still Team Sony, but if their price is astronomically higher, I could very easily be swayed to Team Microsoft.
For me, and I feel like I say this every time we talk about this, but at the moment, I'm probably Team Sony at launch, because with Ratchet & Clank now being a kind of launch title and Spider-Man right off the bat makes me want to play it. I definitely will be getting, because I am a hobbyist and obviously I have all of the consoles, I'll probably end up getting the Series X down the road. But right now, with all of their Game Pass promises, most of the games that I want to play are also available on my Xbox One. So I don't really see the need to upgrade right away. So I feel like I can get both, but stagger it and not be out like $1,000 at once.
Yeah, I think I'm Team No One right now. The first one I get will almost assuredly be the PlayStation 5, but I don't know that I'll get it at launch, especially if it's $600. But yeah, Microsoft, you haven't won us over yet. It seems like across the board here. Techtic is swaying, but you gotta push.
Well, like even if I get the PlayStation 5, I'm probably still gonna spend so much time on my Xbox One just because that's my ecosystem of comfort. There's a lot to be said about that. There really is. Sure.
Yeah. And for me, I think I'm casual. I'm more casual gamer than you guys are. So for me, that's not as much a factor. I have a PlayStation 4 that I actually, since finishing Last of Us 2, I haven't touched it. Now I'm playing the Switch a lot, but the Switch is a totally different experience that's extraneous to all of this. So if and when I get the PS5, I'll be like, oh man, a new thing for me to try out. It'll be like I'll be starting from scratch is what I'm saying. And I won't be, but it'll feel that way. In any case, we want to know on Twitter, Microsoft fans out there, tell us why we're wrong. I guess is what I'm mostly asking. And you've probably already tried and I haven't cared or listened to you. Hopefully that changes, but we're on Twitter at OWLeague86, at OW Nerdbomber, at OW Techtic, and our main show account at Online Warriors 1. Let us know what you think about the launch. And again, if you're an Xbox and Microsoft person, let us have it. So yeah, again, not the last time we'll be talking about the next gen stuff. Probably talking about it next week, especially if the stuff I'm hearing about Sony is true. But for now, let's talk about Uber, which I feel like we talked about Uber quite a bit on the podcast. Not so much lately, but they're one of those buzzy companies that often come up here, and they have made a buzzy promise. As of today, they are pledging to shift to 100% electric vehicles by 2030. Now, you may be wondering the same thing I wondered when I read that headline, which is how? It's actually not what you may think. Uber obviously doesn't have a fleet of vehicles. They have a fleet of drivers who have their own vehicles. So the question becomes, how do you incentivize the drivers to buy electric vehicles? And the answer actually is not paying drivers to make the switch and buy the cars. It's adding an extra fee onto a rideshare when you specifically select an electric vehicle, which I think is interesting. It's $1 extra, and 50% goes to the driver, 50%, so 50 cents goes to Uber. And apparently this is their way of incentivizing drivers to get electric vehicles. I'm a little skeptical, if you can't tell.
I don't know if 50 cents would persuade me to buy a much more expensive vehicle.
Right. I mean, the ride-sharing economy is fairly inscrutable to me. I feel like we've heard a lot, especially in the past few years, about how Uber and Lyft take advantage of their drivers, and drivers don't make as much as you think they make. So this just kind of, piles onto that and leaves you thinking, how is that really that much extra? But there are some cold hard facts laid out in this article, which is again from The Verge. I want to find some here. Okay, research suggests, and I'm quoting directly now, that the average ride-hailing trip creates about 50% more pollution than the average traditional car trip. I don't know how that makes sense.
Really?
Yeah, you would think that. Well, we don't need to get into it. I don't really get
Actually,
it,
but I might have an idea here. So when you're going from point A to point B, you start at point A and you go right to point B. When you call an Uber, they start at point C, go to point A, go to point B, go back to point C.
Ah, I see.
Maybe not go back to point C, but like they go back somewhere else.
Go to point D.
They go somewhere.
Yeah. Okay. You got me on that. The rest of this article goes on to basically say that Europe is really great, and like Norway's like halfway to all electric vehicles already. Like a bunch of European countries are just behind, and America's, as we probably know at this point, lagging behind. So companies like Uber and Lyft, who has the same promise for the same year, they announced it back earlier this summer. 2030, they're going to have 100% electric vehicles. I guess my response generally is I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, what percentage of, and this data is not in the article, but I want to ask you guys, what percentage of the country do you think owns electric or hybrid vehicles?
I feel like hybrid's definitely higher, but all electric has to be a very small percentage, just because I know, like, at one of the places that I frequent a lot, or used to frequent a lot, they had a electric car charger, and there were only 2 ports, and that was the only electric car charger within like 10, 15 miles. So it can't be that many people, because not that many people are using electric car chargers unless they're just charging up at home.
Right.
But I feel like there's not enough supply ports to make me believe that a lot of people own them.
I think you combine hybrid and electric vehicles. Just say how many people are driving electrically enabled vehicles. I would say it's no higher than 30%.
Yeah, I was going to say
maybe
like
I'm totally wrong,
even.
But so to say that as a company you're going to get to 100 in now less than 10 years, I don't see it happening.
I could see it maybe
I don't want to be
in some cities where the electric car infrastructure is already in place, because like I said, there's not a lot of charging stations for these cars, at least not in my neck of the woods. I don't really see a lot of them around when I'm bombing around in my like 20-mile radius from home.
I think they could have gotten away with saying something along the lines of, by 2030 all of our fleet will be autonomous. That, for me, is more believable than forcing the volunteering drivers to get electric cars.
How is that more? Oh, okay. I see the point.
Well, because now the company has the control of it, and they can actually influence that change, short of laying off all their people and only hiring people with electric vehicles. That's the only way to actually meet that promise.
And like, I don't know how you enforce it even, because I understand you have to register your car, but you can't tell me someone won't find a way. They'll register their car as like a black Volt or whatever an electric car model is, and they'll really show up in an older Chevy model that looks kind of similar, and no one's going to question it because the plates are the same, and they ask for the driver's name, and it all seems copacetic. You know what I mean?
You have to think, even outside of just downright like trying to game the system in that way, I think there are a lot of drivers, and again, I don't understand the economy of it, but there are a lot of drivers who are like, I don't need the 50 cents. That's not enough for me to be like, I'm going to buy an electric vehicle. I'll stick to the vehicle I have. And at that point, what can Uber do to further convince them to get an electric vehicle? Because if they can't convince them, then guess what? They don't have 100% of their vehicles as electric vehicles.
The only way I could see it being feasible is, as Techtic said, you'd have to start kicking people off the app if you didn't upgrade to an electric car, which then you take away the availability of cars for your user base. So it's interesting. If they actually pull this off, I will be pleasantly surprised, but I don't think it's going to happen. Maybe that's just me being a pessimist, but without getting into too many like thoughts on things, I don't think that enough people would be incentivized to save the earth by buying an electric car by a mere 50 cents.
Yeah, well, and I'm just trying to think about what the last point you made about kicking people off the app. Is that not also, I guess Uber drivers are independent contractors or something, right? So they're not technically being fired. To get that, you couldn't call that being fired without cause or anything, right? Is there a legal? I guess what I'm saying is I could see 9 years down the road, someone gets fired for not having an electric vehicle and they sue Uber for $1 billion or something because their terms of service don't, you know what I mean?
I think they would have to revisit their terms of service and whatever contract they have with all of the different Uber drivers out there and make sure that it's pretty airtight. I would say, I don't know how many states are at-will states. I think in at-will states, they could fire / kick off anybody that they don't want, but in other states, it might lead them into a sticky wicket.
I love a good sticky wicket. I'm an Uber user myself. It's very rarely do I ever use it, but I've never used Lyft, I don't think, a single time.
Really?
So if you ask me who's going to get there first, I would say Uber. But do you guys have thoughts on that? I don't know which company is more forward thinking. I guess Lyft announced it first, but I don't know if 2 months isn't going to buy you much time to get this sorted out.
You don't use both of them now? That's the part that I'm kind of interested in. Because I know whenever we go somewhere and we need to use either an Uber or a Lyft, we literally pull up both apps, see which one is cheaper, and that's the one we go with. Because most of the drivers in my area do both.
Well, see, it has to do with availability. I'm not sure if there's all this weird legality surrounding Uber and their competition with taxis, right? So I want to say I know we have Uber here where I live, but I don't know if we have Lyft. And if we do, I guess I've just never thought to. I used to have an Uber credit card too, which is a big part of it, where you would get more cash back if you used Uber with your Uber card. So at that point, I wasn't even thinking about it. But now I don't have that card anymore, so I could be thinking more about, like you said, just literally, having the services compete with one another, because it's very easy to do that. But we'll see which one gets there first. Electric vehicles, 2030, 10 years away. It's sooner than it sounds, I guess. Right now, we are at the midpoint of our show, so we're going to take a short break as we often do. But before we do that, I want to shout out our fantastic Patreon producer, Mr. Ben Checkness. In fact, I'd be remiss if I did not shout him out, so I will shout him out now. As I mentioned, Ben is our Patreon producer. He's supported the show pretty much since the beginning, I feel like. It's been a very long time. We really appreciate all that he's given to the show and all of his input, because he also, on top of the occasional guest segment, he has weekly input into our game segment. So he gave some input into the topic for the quiz later, who I think, Nerdbomber, is it your turn to give the quiz? I know it's not mine. That's all I know. So we'll be doing that later. So Ben supports us at the night level, which is the topmost of our 3 levels of Patreon support. And as a result, he gets that producer shout out, that input into the game segment, the occasional guest spot, and access to the monthly secret segment and vlog. So that's super cool, and we thank Ben for that. And you could have access to all that stuff too if you became a knight. We actually knight you. There's a sword, and we can't social distancing right now, but typically we do. There's also a Squire level, which is the second level, and that gets you access to the monthly secret segment and vlog. And then there's also the page, which gets you access to the monthly secret segment. So if you want more of the details, you can head over to patreon.com/Online Warriors Podcast. Check it out. Thanks again to Ben, and we'll be right back.
Ich bin ein
Science!
Cannabinoids, genetics, coronavirus, dogs. This is Petri Dish.
Science!
We're a science podcast exploring complex subjects with clarity and evil humor. Join the scientific revolution. Join Petri Dish, dropping every Monday on anchor.fm/Petri Dish.
Okay, we're back. Talk about, so a couple of things Nintendo. We talked about Microsoft before, and in part we also talked about Sony because they're a direct competition. But Nintendo, the other member of the big three, last week, I think last Thursday it was, I don't remember exactly what day, they had a Nintendo Direct, basically in celebration of the 35th anniversary of Super Mario Brothers. And as a direct result of that, they're coming out with a number of things. We'll stick to the headliner here, which is what they're calling Super Mario 3D All-Stars. And this is something that I'm going to be buying. I'll start by saying that. I don't know when, but this is basically a collection of Super Mario 64, Super Mario Sunshine, and Super Mario Galaxy. I haven't played Galaxy. I played Sunshine and Super Mario 64. Love both of them. Basically getting, I wouldn't call it a remaster, but they're, getting some, what they're calling technological improvements. This drops September 18th. The weird thing, only available until March of 2021. I don't understand that at all.
I played all of those games. I love it. I am going to buy this. I am going to buy the digital copy simply because people are already trying to gouge other people for the hard copy.
I've seen this.
Which is wrong.
Yeah.
But that said, I get having the limited edition. It makes it like something special. But I do not understand why put a limited manufacturing window on something that doesn't really require manufacturing. Like the digital should just always be available.
Exactly. And I couldn't agree more. I think it's silly.
I think, frankly, it's building a gate that doesn't need to be there. What if people still have... I mean, you were late to the game buying a Nintendo Switch. Just be inclusive, Nintendo. Welcome everybody.
I think... Well, I think like it is weird, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that... I feel very strongly about this, actually. I think remasters should happen more than they do. I think remasters are fantastic. I don't see them as money grabs, because typically they don't come off as money grabs. The prices aren't that bad, and like this is 3... really good games for, I think, $60. Really good, really long games. And like, I've played a lot of remasters. I played the Uncharted collection on PS4 that remastered the original Uncharted. Last of Us remastered, I played that. I'm waiting anxiously for a Metroid Prime remaster and a Dead Space remaster. Like, there's so many games that I want to be remastered, and I would pay so much money for it. And I have to imagine it's not that hard to do. So like, game companies, if you're listening, like, you need to do this more. Do you guys are picking up what I'm putting down here?
I couldn't agree more. I think there's a nostalgia market with respect to remastering that is just completely vast. And not only do you get that market, but you also introduce people into these great games that are really just going to be a new fun experience for them because it's going to be at the higher quality.
I also agree. Like, so for me, I think it depends on how quickly you release a remaster too. Like, if it's within 2 years of the game coming out, you don't need a remaster. I'll put that out there in the world.
Sure.
However, like, for example, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2, which my pre-order still hasn't come in yet, and I'm very upset about it. It's supposed to be here Friday.
That's getting
it should have been here
really good
Friday.
reviews. We should have talked about that.
Yeah.
We should have talked about that, actually.
But that is a game that came out, and I think it's a little bit more than a remaster. Like, technically it is a remaster, but they basically just brought a game that everyone loved and missed and resurrected it for 2020 and a new audience, and a lot more people will discover this game who might never have gotten a chance to play it. And so for that reason, I'm on board with remasters, as long as they're not an obvious cash grab within a couple years of release.
I mean, look what happened with... I can't remember if it was the Super Nintendo or the Nintendo, but they came out with those little plug-and-play systems, and they sold them for like $100 or something, and they were selling out. It was one of those things, one of the crazy things. They were selling out, maybe because they were collector's items, but also because people just wanted to play the games again. And like, those were like 16-bit, like, I could code one right now if I wanted to.
Are you referring to the GameCube mod where you can play your Game Boy Advanced games type stuff?
No, I'm referring to the... Oh, that was cool too, though. But I'm referring to the actual... They sold these little consoles. Remember, I think it was called... Well, it was either the Nintendo, the NES, or the SNES, and they basically sold that in a way that you could, HDMI, plug it in and stuff. But it was the same games all on there. You didn't need cartridges. It was just a brick with a bunch of games on it, basically. But it sold like hotcakes. And like, I think sometimes I really do feel like companies like Nintendo don't fully understand the gold mine they're sitting on, and this is a direct antithesis of that. It seems like they do realize it because they're releasing this remaster, but like, how many other titles could they do this for? Like, I think they could do Banjo-Kazooie. They could release that, and I would buy it. Like, if the price is right, you can make money off of things that you basically have stabled already. Anyways,
yeah, but doing a remaster is a lot more in depth than you would think. It's basically making a game from scratch with some of these just with a plot and everything already defined.
Right. Well, but I think that's an important step. I mean, especially considering, one of the examples I gave was The Last of Us. Everything's, the hard part there, I would argue, is done. But you're right. I don't know the ins and outs of actually remastering a game, but I'm sure this, quote unquote remaster of Super Mario 64 is going to look exactly the same as the original did. And I don't care. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to play it. I'm going to love it. So I think there's a way to do this right. And again, I guess if the price is right, that's an important detail. But this is one of a few things that came out in this direct. They also announced a number of other Mario-centric things that we're not going to get into now. But I wanted to shout that out before we talked about another one of Nintendo's bigger IPs, maybe the biggest IP, and one that I've never understood, The Legend of Zelda. I'm going to have to turn this over to one of you guys because as I think famously at this point, I tried to play Ocarina of Time and I hated it. I've never been a Zelda person, but Hyrule Warriors, I believe, is the name of the game here.
I don't understand you at all.
No one does. No one does.
This looks absolutely awesome. It takes place 100 years before Breath of the Wild, and Breath of the Wild in itself was this game that kind of changed the mechanic behind the Zelda franchise, and in my opinion, it was for the better. It opened up this vast new world and just had a lot of pros to it. So they basically took all of that was good with Breath of the Wild and added to it, giving you a whole host of cast that you can play as in your different warrior suite. They're going to add some backstory to what we had kind of been hinted at in Breath of the Wild, and my goodness gracious, it just looks it looks like a riot. It really does. I'm for it.
Nerdbomber, anything to add? I'm kind of out to sea here.
I mean, that pretty much covered it. I think it looked like a really interesting. I've never played the Hyrule Warriors games. I did play Breath of the Wild, and you might look at me like I'm crazy again, Techtic, because you already just gave Illeagle the spiel, but I wasn't a huge fan. It was a little bit too open-ended for me, and I couldn't get into it a little bit. So now that that's on the table, I think it looked interesting. I don't know if I'm going to play it, but it did have co-op, and so I'm always down to co-op with you.
Aw.
Is there a chance? I'm trying to connect with this. Is there a chance that people see this and think, no, work on Breath of the Wild 2?
Oh, yeah.
Which, by the way, has already been announced.
I think for sure. I think by tying the story of Hyrule Warriors into Breath of the Wild and calling it a prequel, they're trying to get some of the people who love Breath of the Wild on board and bring a little bit more life into that franchise. But I think a lot of those people will also be thinking exactly that. Like, I want the sequel. I don't care about a prequel.
But now it's a trilogy.
Right. I mean,
that sounds so much cooler.
It's not like a, Diablo 4 Blizzard situation, but it's certainly far off from that. But I imagine there will be some people who would be like, geez, I just wanted, Breath of the Wild 2.
And they did say that was still being worked on and that was coming eventually. So, I guess this should hold you over until then.
See, that's why I'm excited about this. They know that the fans have been really wanting more great content. And so they could have just said, hey guys, we're still working on Breath of the Wild 2. Just be patient. Instead of doing that, they said, be patient, but also here's another game to kind of keep you satisfied for now. And that's a great game developer customer relationship, in my opinion.
And this might sound crazy, but I do tend to trust Nintendo because so far the majority of their major titles have been pretty darn good. I would say with the exception of a few. I think some of the earlier launch titles for the Switch were just okay. They weren't bad by any means. They were just okay. Nothing to super write home about, just something to play. But I think as they've really gotten their stride, most of the Switch Nintendo first-party releases have been phenomenal. So I put my faith in Nintendo a little bit. Maybe I shouldn't, but here I am doing it.
I think what it is for me, there's a bitterness and there's a jealousy here. I've been waiting for Metroid Prime 4. How long has it been? 2013?
It's been a while.
I don't remember when 3 even came out, but it has been so long. And that's another situation, by the way. I would pay $100, probably more than $100 for a Metroid Prime remaster for the Switch. It would be the easiest money I've ever spent in my life. I would put a second mortgage on my house for it. And also, it's something that could have happened years ago. But, I guess they're probably working really hard on Metroid Prime 4. I understand that. But where's Metroid Prime 4? I'm getting impatient.
For a franchise that big,
Zelda fans getting what they want. I'm jealous.
I understand your impatience, and I totally get it. Because if I was in your shoes, I would also be very impatient. And I was after Mass Effect 3. But then I got I won't call it a stinking pile of crap. I'll call it the very average and mediocre pile of Mass Effect Andromeda. And it wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't bad. I had fun with it. It just wasn't what I wanted. And I'd spent so long yearning for it that I was upset that I got something kind of mediocre. So be grateful, I guess, that they're taking the time to hopefully make it a good game.
I understand that good things come to those who wait and all that, but it's been so long.
You could be like me in Kingdom Hearts.
Point.
I waited like half of my life for Kingdom Hearts 3, but it was super great when it did come out. So
right. Well, Hyrule Warriors will be coming soon to the Zelda fans, and I'll still be here waiting for Metroid Prime 4. Right now, we're going to move into the What Are You Up To Wednesday segment of the show, where we talk about what we've been up to, because it's Wednesday when this comes out. And we'll start with Nerdbomber today. Ladies first.
All right. So as you guys know, Mulan came out on Disney Plus premiere over the weekend, and I hemmed and hawed about whether I wanted to spend $30 to watch the movie, but with a lot of reasoning behind it, it took me a lot to come to the conclusion, but I was going to watch it. I didn't want to wait till December. Wanted to support a cast with diversity that we usually don't see, and so I wanted to watch the movie. And a lot of people who were in love with the cartoon version of the movie said that it felt a little flat to them. And I'll give you that. It didn't have that same fun magic that the animated movie had. It just did not. It was a more serious and adult take on the Chinese legend of Mulan. They did add in some weird magical entities and the concept of chi, which it basically made Mulan more powerful and a better fighter than she would have been as if they had just followed the original Chinese legend, where she was just a really good swordsman woman who just managed to work hard and become as good of a fighter as she was because she worked super hard. So they added some magical elements. And overall, I thought the movie was very enjoyable, but there are a lot of people out there saying the movie was just okay. And I think there's room in this world right now for both opinions, because my perspective on it was I wanted to see something a little bit more serious. I didn't want to see the cartoon rehashed, because while I did love Aladdin and The Lion King, which everyone can yell at me, that's fine. I liked them. They were fun. I did want to see what Disney could do if they took a story and retold it in the way, maybe a different way, not necessarily the way it should be told, although talking to some people that I know from China and just knowing the Chinese audience reaction to the cartoon version didn't really do The Legend of Mulan justice. So I wanted to see what they could do. And in my opinion, I thought it was a visually stunning movie. I thought it would have been better served in theaters, if I'm being totally honest. Like, we have a decent setup at home, a decent nice little surround sound and nice little movie setup, but it's not the same as going to the movies. And I think it would really have benefited from being seen on a big screen. I think the acting, in my opinion, was good. I think it accurately reflected a lot of the persona from the legend, in my opinion. There was some magic missing, but overall, I thought it was a pretty good and empowering story. I really liked it. And the witch character, while it was weird that they introduced magic for seemingly no reason, was one of my favorite characters in the movie. And I almost wish they had done more with the witch character if they were going to add this magical element. She was probably one of the most compelling characters in the entire movie aside from Mulan. So that's kind of my take. I enjoyed it. I would say it's worth a watch. Was it worth $30 to watch at home? Probably not, in my opinion. But it's a pandemic and I need entertainment when I can get it. So whatever.
I'm surprised to hear you say that. I thought you would say go for it.
I mean,
it seems like you were a big fan.
Considering that the movie is becoming free for all Disney Plus subscribers in literally 3 months, I believe it was December 4th is what the website says.
Yeah,
like
I think so.
For $30, you're not really getting a whole lot. You're not getting that movie experience. Like it does go and benefit, I guess, in a standpoint that maybe Disney will be more apt to make more diverse movies like this. But from what you get in turn, like what your value is, I don't know if it was worth $30 personally, but I still really enjoyed it. So for me, I didn't mind paying that.
Well, good to know. I will probably be watching it, perhaps not this weekend, but soon. On the order of soon, I'll give you an update on. It's gonna be one of the few things that you say, yes, watch it, and I'll watch it.
I will say, I know you're a big score boy.
I'm excited for that.
So the music, obviously, was not a musical, and most of the original music was not in this movie. But they did hint to a lot of the songs from the original movie in the score, and that I really enjoyed. And there were some moments when the score, I think, really made a scene.
I am a big score boy. You've got me pegged. And I see Harry Gregson Williams, who I know. This is a guy that has worked a lot with Hans Zimmer. I believe he worked on The Dark Knight. In any case, he's worked on a lot of movies that I've seen. Good to know. Good tip. I always need work music too. So cheers. Techtic?
So I too watched Mulan. I'll say it was visually stunning. I just couldn't relate to the characters. Everything else was good though. But I'm not going to belabor that anymore. I'm going to talk about other things that I did in my week. And the big one for me was I played the I think it's pronounced Carrion game. The game we had talked about where you're this big blob of a monster and you're just going around a seemingly military base eating everybody. And I have to say, one of the more relaxing games I've played. And I know that makes me sound like a psycho, but it's kind of mindless, a little bit puzzly, and you just kind of squirm through and upgrade your blob abilities to solve more complicated puzzles and just relaxingly devour many humans. It's peaceful.
It's got very good reviews, so I believe it.
I do enjoy it. It's, don't judge a game simply by its graphics. The graphics are what they are. It's a side scroller, or it's side scroller-esque, but there's just something to be said for it, and it's very enjoyable. The other thing is Nerdbomber and I had started playing Battletoads.
Like the old one? Like the original?
No, this is the new one that just came out this year.
Okay. The fighting is pretty straightforward. We're pretty good at that. But there's these side things, like you're in a battleship or you're on a luge or you're racing. And those things are next to impossible. The game is so hard if you're not fighting. If you're doing other stuff, impossible. So all in all, fun experience, co-op. You can go up to 3 people playing together, but hard, very hard.
So I'm going to piggyback on that with part of my update, because one thing that my girlfriend and I have been doing is we got a Switch Online subscription, which definitely recommend that, by the way. Pretty awesome. You get access to a bunch of old SNES and NES games. And one of her favorite games from when she was younger, and one that I played on the Game Boy actually, but never on the NES or SNES, is Donkey Kong Country. Are you guys familiar with Donkey Kong Country?
Yeah, I played it.
Yep.
That game. So first of all, couch co-op, which is great.
Who's
that game is
Diddy Kong?
My girlfriend is a Diddy Kong person, so I am Donkey Kong. That game is so hard, guys. There are a lot of games on a lot of the retro games that you play, and you're like, oh my god, games used to be so hard. Donkey Kong Country, there is this minecart level that you have to jump over fallen cars.
I actually
and, jump
remember
over
that one.
Oh my! Honestly, I'm gonna have nightmares about it for the rest of my life. I don't know what else to say about it other than that it's really fun, but it's really hard.
You get to a point where you start memorizing the level, and it becomes more muscle memory than it is actually reacting.
Especially with the minecart level, that is true. Been playing some of that. I have essentially finished Burnout Paradise Remastered. And that's another great remaster. Granted, I didn't play the original, but they remastered it. It's fantastic. Played through all of it on the Switch. It's one of those games where there are collectibles. So there are billboards that you smash, and there are gates that you can smash, all hidden all around the city. And I have smashed 395 out of 400 gates. And part of me just wants to spend hours finding those last 5 gates. And I don't know if I will, but I've played through. So the remaster comes with all the DLC that came with the original game, which is called Big Surf Island. And there's more billboards and smashes there as well. I've smashed all those, beat all the races. So I'm going to be moving on. I'm in transition right now, but 10 out of 10 would recommend. Love it. If you love driving games, if you love Burnout games, it's a classic Burnout game. A lot of car combat. So big ups to that. The last thing I want to mention is I watched I'm Thinking of Ending Things on Netflix, which is a Charlie Kaufman movie. He's known for films such as Adaptation and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. And I would not recommend that movie. It's getting very good reviews, but the people that are reviewing it are, I guess, professional critics who understand a lot more. There's no plot in like the last 40 minutes of the movie. So if you like watching a plot, don't watch it. That's my mini review. It was interesting, but I guess it was just over my head. So that's that on my end, which brings us to the end and to the Nerdbomber game segment. I believe the quiz topic this week is chess.
Yes,
which is good because I'm a chess master.
So I'm very excited about this. I have a wide variety of questions. They're all Price is Right style.
Okay.
And if you go over, you bust. We will have Techtic go first to start.
Give me a sporting.
Yeah, because
I appreciate it.
You haven't won in a while, so like hopefully maybe this is your week.
It's been a minute. I'll take the advantage.
So jumping right into it, a knight's tour is a sequence of moves such that the knight visits every square on the chessboard exactly once. What is the number of possibilities of a knight's tour?
He has to reach every single piece.
A knight has to visit every square on the chessboard exactly once.
Does a visit count as the places that he like taps as he does his L?
No.
The final destination?
No. Yes.
Okay.
It actually has to sit on the square.
I'm going to say 312 possible ways to do it.
Oh, absolutely not. I was going to say like 1 or 2. So I'm just going to say 1 because I'm pretty sure Techtic busted.
All right. So Techtic actually did not bust. He actually was very far under. There are a lot of different varieties and possibilities how a knight's tour can be carried out, over 122 million different ways. So you guys were both extremely low.
No. Okay, I can see how this is going to go. Boy, all right.
Moving on to the next one. How many moves was the official longest chess game?
Oh, this was 628 moves.
Techtic, what say you?
So it was an official game.
Yes.
With the little clock and everything. I love chess. I wish I was good at chess.
I think that you busted, actually, but I don't think you're that far off. I'm going to say 400.
I did go pretty high. Yeah.
Okay, so you guys both busted. To kind of resurrect this question, can you tell me the year that this game occurred in? And it only had 269 moves.
I could have a chess game with longer moves than that. What year? Oh, it's not my turn first. Techtic, it's your turn first.
It was 1984.
All right, Illeagle, what do you think?
No, way before that. They were playing chess, back in the Middle Ages. I'm going to say 1800.
Okay, so Techtic was actually pretty spot on. It was 1989 was when this game occurred.
They weren't recording chess game move numbers in the 1800s.
No, they would write it down. They would write it down on papyrus. Well, I'm blowing it. This is going to be a historical collapse
Hopefully,
for Team Illeagle.
There's several more questions, so you have a shot. What was the longest game of chess possible? So the official longest chess game was 269 moves, but that's not the longest game of chess possible. How many moves is the longest game possible?
What does that even mean?
It's not like infinite.
You can do dumb moves forever and it'll go forever.
But you can't.
Apparently you can't. I know there's a rule that if you make the same move 20 times in a row, it's a draw. So I'm going to extrapolate from that. And how many pieces are on the board?
What's the unit of measurement?
800 moves.
Moves. So I'm not saying that anyone has actually played this, but theoretically.
I didn't answer yet.
I know. I'm giving you a little bit more, both of you, to go on.
Oh, wait.
Theoretically, this is the longest game of chess possible. It doesn't mean that it's happened officially.
I'm going to change my answer because I realize my math is terrible. I'm going to say 400 moves. I said 800 before. I'm going to say 400.
I'm going to say 450.
All right. So Techtic scooped you. You guys were both really far off again. It was actually 5,949 moves is technically the longest game of chess possible.
Technically.
That number's not even. How does that make sense? Oh my God.
I don't know. I don't do the math. I just research the trivia facts, man. I don't make this stuff up.
Oh, okay. So do I have a chance to even tie now, or is it over?
So
give me a.
I have 4 more questions. But Techtic has 3, so you could technically tie or win, Depends.
Techtic, go for the whitewash, man. I'm off my game today.
Okay, so the next one is, what is the shortest number of moves possible to achieve a checkmate? This one's kind of a tricky question. Just throw that out there.
Is it my turn? Is it my turn first?
Yes.
It's like 2. It's 2.
Techtic?
I think you're right, but I'm gonna have to guess 3.
So Illeagle actually got a question right, guys. It's actually 2 moves, and the sequence is called the Fool's Mate Run. Don't know what the actual sequence is, but I'm sure you can Google it to see how you can pull it off.
Yeah, I've tried to do it before, but obviously the person you're playing against has to be a total dweeb to fall for it.
Yeah, he has to be the dweeb.
Okay, let's not get into it. I'm on the board. You screwed up the whitewash. You should be embarrassed.
I knew that was the answer, so that's
now.
kind of unfair.
Yeah, I got first ups. I'll take it.
So
I'll take it where I could get it.
This next question, Techtic, you'll have the first ups this time. The first computer program that played proper chess was written by Alex Bernstein at MIT. What year did he write this computer program?
What is proper chess?
Chess.
As opposed to improper chess, not street rules, actual chess.
I'm going to say...
I know what the answer is. I'm so confident.
I'm going to say 1970.
1976.
Oh, gosh. Come on, guys. You both busted.
Oh, man.
1959. God. No one gets a point.
They didn't have What?
They did have computers. They were like the old school computers, man.
The imitation game computers. The things that are like, you got to put them in a warehouse. God,
it's still a computer. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, that's not a proper game of chess, if you ask me.
That was definitely street rules. Okay. So it's still what? 3-1,
3-1.
Right? Like, how many questions left?
With 2 questions left. So you can still come back and tie it, and then I'll have to scramble for a tiebreaker. But
I love making you scramble.
Chess has been added to the Olympics. What year did chess get added to the Olympics?
Oh, this was recent. This was like 1994. I don't even know if that was an Olympic year. I'll go 92. 92.
I think it was earlier than that. I'm going to say 1980.
So Illeagle is making his little comeback. It was 1999, so he gets the point.
Yes. Yes.
It is now 3-2. This next question will make or break Illeagle's hopes for winning. And maybe...
The dream is still alive. I have last ups. Oh my God, here we go.
So Oscar Shapiro became the oldest player to become a quantified chess master. How old was he?
Did you say quantified?
Yeah,
I
needed
as opposed to an unquantified
adjective, and then I grabbed at quantified, and it wasn't a good adjective, but I'm rolling with it. He was a quantified chess master.
How old is he now, or how old was he when he reached mastery?
How old was he when he was a glorified chess master? I guess maybe, I don't know. Insert adjective here, guys.
They did some calculation. They counted things up, and they said you're a chess master. Okay. Techtic, you're up.
Is it like airbending when you reach mastery? Similar to that?
Definitely.
Okay. I'm going to go with 35.
Isn't it the oldest one ever?
Oh. Wait, oh. No.
No, you can re-guess. That's...
I'm going to go with...
I don't want to win that way.
I'm going to go with 60.
Good grief.
Okay. When you said 35,
I'm going to say 61.
Like,
it's...
How...
It's...
Are you going to beat me that way?
Older
That's
than
30.
Okay, fine. Well, fine. 70. I know it's way older than that. I'll say 70.
Okay, so you actually tied the game up. He became a chess master at 74 years old. Okay, so I have a fun tiebreaker question here. Very few people have ever achieved 100% winning records in tournament play. How many people have managed this incredible feat?
Okay, and I go first, and I'm going to say 3. There's some holy triumvirate out there. There's 3 guys who did it. Bobby Fischer. I don't know the others. Bobby Fischer's the only famous chess player I know. So I'll say Bobby Fischer and 2 other guys. Or girls. 3 is my answer.
4.
Well, with that, Techtic takes the cake and Illeagle loses again. 10 people have achieved that amazing 100% record.
I regret none of it. It was a fun ride, thinking that I could get out of the loser circle. You know, the bright side of this, I don't have to host quizzes ever. I don't have to make questions. I'm just along for the ride, having a good time, losing constantly. But I'm not throwing the games. I'm legitimately this stupid. Tune in next week for me to lose another quiz, at the very least. We may be talking about Sony then. We may be talking about whatever else crazy thing happens here in 2020. But either way, we hope you'll be with us. And we thank you for joining us now. If you enjoyed what you listened to, or even if you didn't, you can head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. And again, we have social medias. Hit us up on Twitter at OnlineWarriors1, at OWLeague86, at OW Nerdbomber, at OW Techtic. We're here to chat with you, if you so desire. And in the meantime, we will talk at you next week.
Have a good week, everybody.